I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to our West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting of Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. We'll start with calling the roll.
Ms. Aronson?
Here.
Mr. Levine?
Here.
Mr. Payson?
Here.
Ms. Poland?
Here.
Dr. Steinberg?
Here.
Dr. Thomas Farquharson?
Here.
Mr. Zdanowitz? Here. Kenya Ferreira?
Here.
Isabella Gom?
Here. Thank you. And Isabella, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do not have a revision to the agenda order this evening and no student participation this evening. So we'll move on to public communications, and we have two people signed up to provide public comments. So first I'll call up Samuel Rosa. And for public comments, please come right up to the podium over here, and you can speak right into the microphone. Start by giving your name and address. Samuel Rosa here. Come on up. And you'll get 3 minutes to speak. Right at that podium right over there. And if you keep your eye on Cammie, she'll hold up a yellow card when you have 1 minute left and a red card when your time is up. Whatever you want. Did you? You were just signing in? Oh yeah, you don't have to tell us anything then. Thank you. If you have anything you want to say, you're welcome to it. All right. Take two. Kim Hughes. Come on up. Same rules, but you look like you have something prepared. So.
Hi, Kim Hughes, 1083 Farmington Avenue. So, thank you for your time. I didn't quite expect this crowd. This is in regards to an issue that you guys discussed at the last meeting. Thank you for this opportunity to offer a different perspective on late school start times. Many people I know and respect support later school start times. I get it. And yet my gut tells me that making this change will not move the needle much in the health and well-being of our children. A couple of things. This change will not be made in isolation. As you know, students will still have distractions like phones, technology, jam-packed schedules. Also, I'm assuming this need for sleep has always existed. Yet it's only in the last few decades that mental health issues seem to have spiked. Can I bring your attention to another issue, another basic need that I would like to get a lot more awareness and attention to? That is food. Especially for our children, especially for those who depend on free and reduced lunch at school as a primary source of nutrition. A chocolate milk and a pastry for breakfast is not okay. That's only part of the picture, though. You could put better, fresher food in front of a child, but they probably won't choose to eat it. Who would choose to eat a side of carrots and celery if you never see it at home, or maybe it's not even culturally significant for you? This is a complex issue, though, that goes well beyond nutrition services. It involves connecting our children to their food by teaching them how to grow, nurture, and harvest it. It involves understanding how obesity and malnutrition can go hand in hand, and how do our bodies respond to fresh food versus processed food. It involves a study of food waste, single-use plastics, the nutrient cycle, and our role in it. Maybe this could be done in an outdoor classroom where students learn how to make observations, and where these experiences give our students agency to connect to the land and their food. Is fresh food a right or a privilege? As an outdoor educator and volunteer, I can see learning about food in these ways has a huge positive impact on children. But no one person or department can solve this. It does begin with awareness, and I thought no better place than a Board of Ed meeting. If you were able to create a Rethinking School Start Times Committee, can I suggest a Rethinking Our Connection to Food Committee? I'd love to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to unfinished business. We don't have any unfinished business. New business. Presentation of the Superintendent's 2020-2021 Budget Recommendations. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education receive the Superintendent's recommended 2020-2021 education budget and begin the process of reviewing and modifying for final approval and adoption as the Board of Education budget at the April 7th, 2020 Board of Education meeting. And I'll turn it over to you, Tom.
Thank you, everybody. Anytime we present a budget, we're presenting really where our priorities are. And to jump right into it, we need to look at who we are as a district, make sure we understand what we're representing and who we're talking about here and who these dollars directly relate to. So West Hartford Public Schools, as you know, about 9,400 students, that's pre-K through 12. That doesn't include our post-secondary program, those children that are 18 to 21 that we're still responsible for the education of. We have 22% of our students, 2,084 kids, with non-English as a home language, 72 different languages spoken. This is one of those things that we're most proud of in town, our diversity, the things that kids bring to the table. With that, however, it's important to remember that that equals more support needed for these children in the form of English as a second language, in the form of some extra language tutoring sometimes. We have 4,092, or 44% of our population, are minority students. We echo the United States trends almost exactly. We've been going up about a percentage a year. Last year we were 43%. And we see how really our district is mimicking the United States trends overall. In fact, over time, we're even becoming more a higher percentage of Latinx students and a lower percentage of African American students over time, which is a similar trend that we've seen across the country. 27% of our students are eligible for free and reduced lunch. That's 2,500, more than 2,500 kids, more than 1 in 4 of our kids. And I think it's important because free and reduced lunch has almost become a euphemism. We can say it and then move on. But what does free and reduced lunch actually mean? Children are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and families are, if their family is at 130% of the federal poverty level for income. That income is not adjusted by state. It is a national figure. So we all know Connecticut is more expensive than, say, Nebraska would be. What does it actually mean, however? Because 130% federal poverty level are eligible for free lunch, 130% to 185% are eligible for reduced lunch. For a family of 4, the federal poverty level is $25,350. That's what the poverty level is, $25,000 in West Hartford for a family of 4. Extrapolated out for what does that mean to be on free lunch? That means we have families, more than 1 in 4 of our kids, who are from a family at $33,000 a year for a family of 4 to receive free lunch, between $33,000 and $46,000 a year to be eligible for free and reduced lunch. That's based on a family of 4 in Connecticut. So these are children with significant needs, and we know what needs poverty also exacerbates. Finally, I want to talk about special education. 1,216 of our kids, 13% of our pre-K to 12 students receive special education services. It's important to note I left out because it ends at 12, and that's almost because historically that's how we present the budget. But when we look at post-secondary students, and we include them, 13.8% of West Hartford's student population is special education. It just a few years ago was 11%. And we can say, well, what does that really mean over time? So I want to go through a 10-year kind of period to look at something here. General inflation, if we go a decade ago, if we go to the 2010-2011 year, just in the United States, general inflation has been 18% during that time. Our regular education costs over that time have gone up 23%. So outstripping general inflation. So for those out there that want to say, see, you're outstripping inflation, guilty as charged. Every bit of that difference is because of the cost of benefits. Benefits for our workers. It's healthcare that has driven that increase. Without healthcare, we look at our spending, we're below the rate of inflation in regular education. Okay, so then we talk about special education. What's happened in this decade? Special education spending in West Hartford. General inflation has been 18%. Regular education, 23%. Special education spending has gone up 58% in that same time frame. So we can say we can't keep up with what's going on. We can say things like, this is unsustainable. But what's unsustainable? Because what we're talking about is kids. I'll give you one very specific example. 5 years ago in West Hartford, we had 0 teachers of the deaf or interpreters that worked for us, interpreting with sign language or hearing impaired. Now we have 11. That's in 5 years. But what does it mean for West Hartford because of where we're situated? Because I use the term that we're a destination district for special education. West Hartford currently has 9 students identified as deaf and 58 students designated as hearing impaired, significantly hearing impaired, for a total of 67 students. If we take Simsbury, Farmington, Bloomfield, Plainville, East Granby, Suffield, Windsor Locks, and Region 10, and look at their health impaired, because Gretchen reached out, that's more than 22,000 students represented in those 8 systems, 11 towns represented. They have a total of 1 deaf student and 56 students with some kind of hearing impairment. So we're talking about 67 versus 56 and 9 versus 1. You look at those costs, that's a driver. When we look at, we'll talk about what's happened over time in West Hartford, because this theme's going to keep coming up about spending on special education. But I want to start right off at the beginning by saying I'm okay with that, because I really don't want to spend all my time apologizing for delivering to families what they need and delivering to parents the same things that I would want delivered for my children. Now we can talk about the costs and why the costs are where they are, and why transportation costs are what they are. We can talk about laws and laws that need to change. We can talk about the cost of outside evaluations that we have no say over. We can talk about legal fees, and we can talk about all of those things all we want. But people move to West Hartford because they're worried about their kids, especially when their kids have significant needs. And I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. It's something we should be proud of. So yes, that spending keeps increasing. That's the driver of our budget. That's been our driver of our budget for the past 10 years. That's it right there. When we look at our size, because we do have to kind of clean these things, and this is just my kind of cool statistic. We look at 1.8 million square feet of buildings. That's bigger than the Pentagon. It's bigger than the Louvre that we clean every night. And right now clean very thoroughly every night. And we have 336 acres of fields. That's 2 Disneylands put together that we maintain all the time for our sports, for our facilities, and otherwise. So, historical perspective, because it's really important for us to talk about where we are. We are 110th out of 169 towns in per pupil expenditures. So when people want to talk about efficiency, again, we're 110th. And frankly, I don't know if I should be proud of this statistic or if this is something I should hide from. I mean, we produce exceptional quality education, and we do it at a rate more efficient than the rest of the state, considering what comes out of it. But 25 years ago when I started, we were like 38th. 30 years ago, we were 23rd. 40 years ago, we spent more per child than any other town in the state of Connecticut. That was West Hartford. West Hartford was not diverse. West Hartford did not have free and reduced lunch at that point, but we spent more than any other town in the state of Connecticut per pupil. Now we're 110th of 169 towns. What does that mean? our cost per child to educate a child in West Hartford is $17,001. We get compared to DergB all the time. That's our measurement for tests. Paul always says we don't shy away from that comparison. We want to be compared to that. But if we spent at the DergB average per child, the budget I'm presenting you would be almost $10 million higher. If we just spent at the state average of what the average state expenditure per child is, the budget would be $4.3 million higher. Now, how do we break down and what goes into our budget? We can talk about being a people organization. 84% of this budget is salary and benefits. So when we're really talking about what are the things that you control, well, salaries and benefits are 84% of what goes into this. 60% of that is salaries, 24% of those costs are benefits. Now, that's more than it used to be. Salaries used to be a far higher driver than benefits were. Benefit costs have gone up. We do have some good news in that area that we'll come to eventually. But basically, the vast majority of our budget is our people. So if you really want to limit the budget, you need to limit the people. Other things that we see, general insurance, 1% of it. This is kind of workers' compensation, liability insurance, property from the town. Tuition being 3% of our budget and a real driver as we look at it over time, because we had in the budget 70 outplacements this year. For next year, it's 88 because right now I'm sitting at 86 outplacements. So I want to explain what that cost means when we outplace a child, and why do we start programs like Strive that keep kids in district. It's not just because it's the right thing to do for kids, it's because it's dramatically cheaper if we can do it effectively. An outplacement is a child that an appropriate education for that child cannot be given in West Hartford Public Schools. This is decided through a PPT, through a long process with our experts and with families in agreement about what the appropriate education for that child is. So what does it cost us? We have to pay for 4.5 times our average expenditure as a start. So if it's $17,000 as an outplacement, that's $74,000 right away, that first $74,000 we pay for. After that, we're responsible for about 30%. The state's at about a 70% reimbursement. So you can basically figure the direct hit to the budget per child is $100,000. So when we're talking about what exactly is driving things, if we're 17 kids over in outplacements, and by the way, this isn't a decision, this isn't a choice, this is law. This is what this child's appropriate education is, then that's going to drive your budget. When we talk about transportation, once again, special education transportation continues to drive the budget. Regular education to transport about 6,000 kids a day is 43% of our total. Special education transportation is 53% of that budget total. It's easy to understand why. We're talking about harness restraint systems. We're talking about monitors on the buses. Sometimes perhaps even a nurse on a bus with a child. So that's what drives those transportation costs. And if it's no place when we're talking about a significant distance sometimes. Activities, sports, and otherwise, that's 4% of our transportation total. And we get to contractual and professional services, only 2%. Even there, special education services, interpreters, therapists, intervention coming in from outside, not our employees, that's $1 million. Legal services falls into this category. IT falls into this category. Custodial maintenance can fall into that category. Then we look at all other, kind of that 3%, because the all other is really the area, okay, this is theoretically, what is this? This isn't kids, this isn't a class. It's classroom supplies, it's textbooks, it's rentals, it's conferences, it's library books, custodial and maintenance supplies, and equipment. So now I come to, okay, what's the meat? What are the actual numbers? That's kind of background. So first we need to talk about a roll forward budget. And what roll forward means is we are going to do the exact same thing next year that we did this year with the same people. Okay, and just that number's not going to stay the same because of all the things that go into that. Increases that are negotiated with unions as part of our salaries and other costs that go up because of things like inflation. This year's roll forward budget is the second largest that there's been since I've been superintendent. It would be $8.68 million, 5.14% roll forward budget, driven, as we said, by a lot of those move-ins. We talk about special education, and we'll talk about salaries increasing $4.3 million or 4%. We've mentioned that this year there's no surplus. We're trying to cut to even. Why is that? We've added 26 positions to meet student need, primarily in special education. I say positions because it's people. Those 26 positions, why? It's because of the significant number of move-ins that we've had from the end of the last school year to this year. That's the complete driver for this. Medical. And the other part of this is just step and general wage increase per collective bargaining agreements. And I know that it's kind of that time where it's, okay, well, that's a significant increase. Those are the contracts that we negotiate that come before you, that you negotiate in this case. Medical. When we look at our medical expenses, we budget a 7% increase, assuming that medical trend in the state. That's the typical school trend over the past few years. Now, we have successfully transitioned to the state partnership plan, but based on the 7%, what we were this year, and including that, we would have been at $1.71 million increase, or 7%. Pension, this is basically a bill we get from the town. This is based on actuarial calculations. Now, this isn't the teacher pension. That's a state, that's separate. These are the pensions for those employees not covered in the teacher pension system that are covered in the town pension. Transportation expenses going up $500,000 is driven by a 3% cost escalator in the contract that has 2+ years to run, and additional buses, none for general education, all special education buses that have started this year. Tuition expenses, as we talked about, increased by $680,000, 15% increase. This is driven by student outplacements. Now, it's also important to say here some of our savings. You know, in Strive, we have 40 students in our Strive program, and next year we'll have 60 in our postgraduate program. That's up from the 40s. So keeping those students here is actually driving down. I know it seems like that number's exploding, but we're actually keeping it from exploding. All other expenses increasing by a little over $1 million. Professional services. So professional services for special ed instruction, that's gone up about $350,000 this year. That's translators as being a driving force. So when we talk about hearing impaired as an example of this cost, in the elementary schools, we've tried to keep kids together so that when we've had to have translators, it's great because that child, 3 kids can be in the same class with a translator. Once they get to middle and high school, not only we can't, but we shouldn't say to kids, you're going to all take the same classes because that'll be cheaper for us. And so that's a driver here. Paraprofessionals, we had to contract this year because of shortages with paraprofessionals from CREC. That's what that category is. That was $450,000 this year. Additional space leased for our post-secondary program. I talked before about the increased numbers. With the increased numbers, we needed more space over at Cogswell, at the ASD, at the building that we have there. General insurance increases during the course of the year. But one thing I do want to talk about, good news, is utility savings due to energy conservation. LEDs, building controls, steam to hot water programs that we've engaged in over time have led us to a $170,000 savings in our electrical, in our energy savings from what we budgeted for this year. So that's been something that's definitely helped us. Other things like equipment, $70,000 we've saved, and $140,000 in some other areas. Modifications. Okay, so that was the roll forward, what it would be if I didn't change anything, if we didn't make that decision. And kind of as a pause to keep myself from coughing, and I swear I'm not sick. You guys know I've had this cough for a month. I really want to thank Liz Hewitt, who's gone through this budget with me in her first year in this role and has suffered through the entire year of meetings every Tuesday with Andy Morrow and myself. And as we've gotten feedback in from so many of our administrators, our executive team, but Liz has just stepped into this and done a great job. So, what are the modifications we've made in what would have been a roll forward budget that I completely understand is not a number that this board could have passed? The elementary school, we have 2 fewer sections due to enrollment decline. In the middle school, we made an adjustment kind of right-sizing Bristow last year that now is in 6th grade and 7th grade. That means a savings of a half a team and a unified arts teacher at Bristow. In the middle school, that's 3.2 FTEs in addition to the 2 FTEs at the elementary school. In the middle school, we can save about 0.4, 2 classes with world languages because of declining enrollment. Because of less enrollment at the middle schools, we'll need 2 less paras in regular education. And then teaching assistants overall throughout the district, directly 3.2 less. But there are some things, while we have an enrollment decline, we do have new graduation requirements, which you described here. And I do think we have kept that to a number that is achievable, that we can meet the needs of our students, and we can do it over time, where we're going to have to keep adding a little bit over time, but it's not one big hit in any given year, hopefully. But that basically is high school mastery, 2 more sections, so 0.4 we'll need for the person that oversees mastery, 1 at each high school, looking at 0.2. For REACH, we'll need about 0.6 more, as we described during the REACH presentation a couple weeks ago. And for STRIVE, we'll need 0.5 for more classes to help these kids reach graduation with the new graduation standards. By the way, at the first workshop, all of these details will be gone through directly. I'm giving a general overview. My whole team will be at the table and will answer questions and go through in great detail each of these changes and what it means. Reallocation of resources. So what kind of things do we also see as reallocation? Elementary principal, who's been in charge of our Computer Science for All program this year to get it off the ground at the elementary level and to look at what we're doing. That position's going to go away, and that's really a budgetary decision. Jeff's done a very good job in that position. We're very pleased with where we are with the elementary planning for this now, and that we can, as we said, this is a 3-year, multi-year process to begin planning, then begin implementing, and then have things up and running. So the planning this year has been tremendous. Offsetting that, not completely, but adding a math coach at the middle school level. We had a presentation on that a few weeks ago. Eliminating the ASK program is in the reallocation of resources. Jim Solomon for years has done a great job with kids at Hall, and that program has helped save lots of kids over the years and brought them in. Jim's been retired for a few years and has come back to help us with this program. We're at the point now where we only have 6 kids coming back in the ASK program. Dan Zatoon is very comfortable in our discussions that we can schedule for those kids with supports, and we also have a larger number of kids with the connection from Shelley Solomon at Hall going to the REACH program. I am completely comfortable that the Ask program, while it was needed at the time that it started at the same time as Connections at Conard. The Connections team was right next to my room. That went away 15 years ago. And Ask, because Jim Solomon has done tremendous work over the years, but now that program we can fold into other programs and mental health supports for our kids that we have. So that's a .78 position. Department supervisors teaching a class saves 2.2 positions. We're working on the scheduling. This is really both budgetary savings, but I want our department supervisors in the classroom at some point during the day. They're excellent teachers, and I want them with our kids. I want our kids to have each of them for one class. Not every kid won't get that. But the idea being that if we look at our administrators, so many of them are focused on how they're with, assistant principals, principals. We have these meeting with kids, they're seeing kids all the time. And the way we've structured department supervisors, they're missing a lot of that time with kids and that direct connection every day. This is one I feel passionately about. I did it when I was a department supervisor for social studies and history. I taught actually one class, and then the second year I taught two classes. And I just think it makes us better the more time we can get with our kids. Computer science teacher on assignment at the high school, .4 of the position as we look at computer science for all. We're going to augment that now that we're moving to middle and high school for actual planning and looking at how is this. That's a .4 position. So instead of teaching two of the classes, they'll be planning and looking at how our computer science program sustains itself from 6 through 12. Redirect funding for CREC pairs to internal teaching assignments. I talked about the CREC positions of $450,000 that we're not going to have next year. But with that, we're going to add 1.9 pairs back into the general education budget to make up for that. Special education needs. This is really adding one social worker. We know our mental health needs, and this will augment our mental health support, in addition to a .5 nurse for the post-secondary program. With the increased number of kids and the increased fragility of health needs, this really isn't a choice. We have to add that position. Benefit adjustments. Here's the good news. $1.3 million in benefit adjustments. I talked about the 7% assumption. It turns out that the movement to the state partnership, about 10 days ago, we were notified that we can budget that at 2% safely for next year. That's $1.05 million in savings. One of the best things that's come out of a negotiation is this board's negotiation with the teachers in the last contract, as that has stabilized what was driving our costs and our increases for years, now is helping to stabilize our costs. So 2% increase there as opposed to 7%, which is what area places are seeing is 7% typically that aren't part of the state partnership. This also, the benefit adjustment, eliminating the $250,000 that was in the budget last year based on the proposal about the state pension system. So put it in last year, proposed to be over time. That seems to have died at the legislature, so there's no reason to have that in this year. So that $250,000 comes out also. Then we look at all others. We're projecting retirement savings about $450,000. That's basically because the retirements that we get, somewhere between 15 to 20 people that are retiring at high salary, we can bring lower salary employees in. So we're banking about $450,000 there. We're eliminating a maintenance position. Now that'll have to be offset by some funding for contracted work to do that maintenance work, but there's savings there. There's also a funding change that Liz will explain with a benefit specialist that's kind of moving, but it's a shift that basically means $2.81 million in modifications. But this is something that I also want to mention here because people talk about we're adding. It's 10.5 less positions for next year than we have this year. So the budget summary. 2019-2020 adopted budget was $168.8 million. A roll forward would have added $8.68 million, but we took out $2.81 million of that. A net increase of $5.87 million, 3.48% budget increase. I thought for a long time this year that number was going to be in the high fours. Thankfully, done a lot of work to get that number down. Recommended budget $174.670,000. I want to end this with, I talked a lot about special education. I talked a lot about our children with needs. I talked a lot about what we do, and I want to thank the people in the audience that work for us. The budget's a reflection of our teachers. We talk all year about what we do, and frankly, West Hartford's parents are very demanding. I can show you my phone messages to prove that to you. But that's the way we want it. We want people demanding the best for our kids. And what we provide, what our teachers provide, what our administrators provide every day, is a tremendous education for our children. The budget reflects that. President Obama said a budget is more than just a series of numbers on a page. It's an embodiment of our values. When I talk about what's driven this budget, it's our values that we are going to stand up for every child. It's our values that we're going to provide our children what they need. It's that we're not going to cut things that enrich the children of our lives because West Hartford demands excellence in education. I'm told that everywhere I go. And anytime we talk about our schools, what do people say? That's what people move to West Hartford for. That's what keeps my home values where they are. That's why I moved to West Hartford with my kids. My daughter's finishing schools now. That's why I came here, for my two kids to experience our schools, and I can't thank their teachers, their administrators for the experiences enough. And I hope that the next generations, and I sometimes think of that for the people that talk about the way things used to be. Well, the way things used to be, we spent more per pupil than any other town in the state. We owe it to the future generations to provide their kids the same education that our kids got or that we got ourselves. So with that, that's our budget. Well, my budget. You'll decide our budget. Next steps. Budget workshops number 1. March 11th, Town Hall, 7 o'clock here. Again, that's where you'll fire away questions. You've got a very thick book here. And I appreciate the work you're going to spend in the next month working on this because it's volunteer and I admire you for it. And I thank you for it. And I know that you ask some hard questions, but my whole team, my executive team, will be at the table to answer those questions for those things that are unique to their area. A second public workshop will be March 25th, where we'll have a public hearing and then the workshop immediately thereafter. People that want to come out and comment about the budget, and then any further questions that come up or things. Sometimes that's a really short meeting, sometimes it's a longer meeting. Then the budget adoption is April 7th at Town Hall, and I do say budget adoption because you're adopting something that night, no matter what. That's at a regular meeting on April 7th at 7 p.m. Then the Town Council adopts the budget. This is a piece of the town's budget, we need to remember, and they have final say over the town budget, not over the education budget. They can't cut any area, they can cut a total amount if they so desire. That's April 20th at 7 p.m. So, with that, any questions about process or anything else?
Tom, just for edification, the Budget 1 workshop is that they'll go over detail. We're not just coming in with questions after reading this. They're going to go through half of the book or the whole thing.
We'll go through the whole thing. And if you have questions that night, as they're talking about it, that's perfectly appropriate to ask questions.
No,
night.
I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood
No,
that it
absolutely.
wasn't just coming in asking questions.
No. That's a good point, Mark. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, the workshop, I mean, by all means, present questions, but my team will present each area of the budget in greater depth than I just did. Talk about what the additions exactly were, whereas I'm making generalities. They're telling you exactly from what area, exactly what numbers. And then they're open to questions after that. So that's a deep dive into the budget that night. The second one, as you say, Mark, is the one where maybe there's questions left over or things that have come up. And during this whole process, please feel free, email me directly. I'll forward it to members of the team that can get back to you, whether you need it right away or if it's something that could come up at the meeting. So,
Other questions or comments? And we know WHC TV will be televising all of this, so people can watch from the comfort of their homes, and if they don't want to come out. But we do encourage members of the public to come to the public hearing and share their thoughts about this budget, or you can also email us to share your thoughts that way. Thank you. And thanks to Tom and your team for getting us started. All right, we will move on to staff communications and reports and superintendent's report.
okay, normally this night I don't talk about anything else. But, as you might have heard, people are talking about coronavirus or COVID-19. I communicated with the families and staff in West Hartford last week, and will continue to do that as the situation merits. Things that you should be aware of, we made the decision yesterday, with letters going out both yesterday and today, made the decision really at the end of last week that overseas travel during April vacation, we believe in it. We support it. But this year, it doesn't make a lot of sense if we don't know what the situation's going to be and what our kids will be coming back to. So the decision was made to cancel those trips, and I can tell you, it's not a universally positive response to the cancellation of the trips. There are people that don't like the financial accommodations made. I understand that completely. I led 2 trips previous times that didn't go, 2001 and 2003. First one because of September 11th, second one because of war in Iraq. And families lost money then. I was a teacher at the time leading a trip. The cancellation came very late at that point. War started in March in Iraq, and it's understood. We've negotiated and tried to talk to the tour companies, but we can't really negotiate on a third party's benefit because we're not the contract holder. The parents are. We can talk in generalities. We can threaten. We can say we're never using you again. We can do all of those things, which we have. But the parent is the one that really has the connection and the contract, as it were, with the different tour company. We're not alone. I don't know of another district that if they haven't canceled, they're not going, that they're not in the midst of planning it right now. Other travel. There are some trips that, like, a music group's supposed to go to Florida in April vacation. But that's not paid yet. And do I have people paying for things when we're unsure, and I just can't do that. So we're moving away from those April trips. I can just tell people now. Other trips this year, this week, we have people going to Washington, D.C. We have some people going to New York City for Model UN. Those trips are continuing. We're monitoring the situation for everything like field trips and otherwise. And we'll continue to act prudently with whatever the situation brings up. And I want to stress that we are planning really kind of nonstop. This has been what we've been doing in a lot of ways since last week, in addition to trying to finish the budget. I've divided my executive team up into areas that they oversee. We met with the principals to discuss it last week and what's happening. The safety of our kids and our families is what comes first. I say that. I'm going to be open with people. I'm going to talk to people about what we're thinking, what we're seeing. I'm not a doctor. I've read more things from the CDC. I think I probably have an associate's by now, but I'm still not a doctor. And so we're going to take the lead from the Department of Public Health. But some of the things I'm going to share with families, please, if your kids are sick, exhibiting symptoms, keep them home. To our staff, don't come in if you don't feel good. If you're exhibiting signs of flu or sickness, the best thing we can do is mitigate any possible spread to keep that from happening. On that line, I've told all the principals, and I don't think there are many left, but there will be no awards given for perfect attendance this year. So if you're one of those holding out, go ahead. You can be sick one day, because I am not stressing the need for perfect attendance. Wash your hands. This goes for everybody. And I know people want hand sanitizer, and I've got hand sanitizer on my desk. But washing your hands is the best thing we can do. Try not to be too close, lumped on each other. We're talking about how do we organize things in classes so that we're not necessarily always on top of each other. Make sure that we're not sharing food. And I don't mean general packaged food have this. I mean kids sharing bites, sharing drinks. That's got to stop. And I'm on my personal crusade against handshaking. We can just wave. We can all just wave to each other. It's okay. For now, at least. Eventually, we can go back to it. So what things are we actively doing? Our nurses are monitoring daily any absence of spikes. We usually look at this over time. We're looking at it every day so that if we see anything, we can report it to the Department of Public Health. We've increased cleaning in our buses and in our schools. And the kind of third thing is, please don't stigmatize our kids. Kids that have a cough that could be an asthma-induced cough. Kids that come from a different place. That's okay. That's what makes us great. That's what we had on that first slide. So our kids are actually really good about this. Sometimes I have to say to our parents, go easy. Because the fact is, we'll get through this. We will get through this. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the Department of Public Health is going to say. I don't know if or when a case will come. And we have every day new questions come up. What about people that are being sent home? What about quarantines? All of those things we're reacting to. So I just ask people for patience and understanding that we are absolutely doing the best we can to keep our kids safe. And there's going to be times when good people don't agree, but it's okay to disagree without being disagreeable. And it's one of those things where we're relying on doctors and Department of Public Health to give us the best advice we can. And we want to be good partners in this. And being panicked around your kids is not the best thing to do either. Teaching our kids that what we do to keep ourselves healthy is what we need to be doing now. COVID-19 can't become a boogeyman that our children are afraid of every day. So, with that, open for any questions you guys might have about this or planning for this. Yeah, Mark.
So, a third-party piece, can we get involved in negotiation because they're larger groups with the insurance? Say insurance costs $143 a person, maybe it costs, $65 a person through negotiations as a third party. For
What do you mean for?
Insurance, travel insurance, in case, so not now, obviously, because it's water under the bridge, but for the future, that we continuously, every year take out travel insurance.
Yeah, those companies are so large that, to be honest with you, they're pretty much set by the company. Our basic threat to them, negotiation with them, West Hartford sends trips every year. We'll never go with your company again. That's an effective threat for them. When you look at a company like EF Tours, where we have multiple trips going every year, I figured out at one point just how much revenue I generated for them with 11 trips that I took to Europe with my kids. That's our best threat, really, and we continue to work with that. And I don't want to get to the point where there's so much hysteria that we say we're never going to travel again. And I don't want to have this adversarial relationship where we say, well, we're not traveling because we can't refund everybody's money. But we can't. I can't spend $280,000 of taxpayers' money to refund everybody's trips. That's just the reality of the situation. Yeah.
In a second note, can you part of the, maybe contract with the parent and kids that they have to take insurance out?
That's something we've talked about in the past, and I'm almost to the point now where I'm thinking more realistically, not realistically, more pessimistically about it, because we strongly urge it. But even with trip insurance, as I've found at times, it's not 100%. And so that's something that I don't want to make insurance out to be something that it isn't to people and say, well, if you get this, you should be all set, because then we are kind of taking on that liability. So, but good question. I'll look into it.
Any other questions? Thank you. We don't have any staff reports and board discussions, so we'll move on to routine matters. And the first item is approval of the minutes. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the regular Board of Ed meeting from February 19th, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ari. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Amanda. Amanda, will you highlight some of the suggested changes for the minutes?
Sure. We just, Cammie and I took some time to go through some just little small changes, Leonard Road, some misspellings and things that are hard to hear when people are talking. And I went through with all of our colleagues anything that was substantive. The only thing that was substantive was under request for future agenda items. We changed that to the status of the existing athletic facilities to reflect the conversation, which we've all talked about. So.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? So the motion would be to approve the minutes with the suggested changes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. Abstentions? And the ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to information and reports. Board members, communications, and reports. Are there any reports from other boards and organizations? Amanda.
I have a short report from the Bridge Family Center. I'm the representative for them, and most of you here have probably heard of the Bridge, but for those of you who don't know, it's an organization that serves as in one capacity as the Youth Service Bureau for the town of West Hartford, and also runs our Family Resource Center, our Teen Center, and does some counseling in town. So the Teen Center, also known as the base for the kids, is based out of the first floor basement area of the Elmwood Community Center, and their monthly teen night is going to be on March 27th. So things like basketball tournament, billiards, ping pong, foosball, video games. Mostly it's a substance-free place for kids to spend time, have pizza. It's very well attended, so please encourage any student in West Hartford. It's not for students who only go to the West Hartford public schools. It's any student who lives in West Hartford who is in grades 9 through 12. They also are running divorce support groups for children in 3 of our elementary schools right now. And we have youth development management groups that are dealing with coping skills, stress management, anxiety management in 3 of the other elementary schools and in all 3 of our middle schools. They're providing mentoring and counseling in almost all of our schools in town. And at the request of one of the school counselors, one of the Bridge counselors is going to be running a support group for all of the students whom she sees at that particular school. So a lot of in-school counseling going on, and just wanted you to be aware of that.
Thank you. Anyone else have any reports? Okay. I don't believe there's any other information and discussion for this item. So moving on to non-staff communications and reports from student board representatives. Take it away.
All right, so winter sports are wrapping up, and with that comes many accomplishments from our students, such as Drew Courier, who won the State Open Wrestling Championship for the 120-pound class. Lisa Hong attended the first girls' state wrestling competition, which is kind of a big deal because girls wrestling is increasing in popularity, so that's pretty awesome. The cheerleaders came in first in their division championship last weekend. Jenna Zdanowicz came in second place in New England in the New England competitions for the indoor track mile, setting a new state record of 4 minutes and 58 seconds, which is really impressive. And girls basketball senior captain Liv Bonney was named to the all-conference team, among many other accomplishments from our students. So that's really exciting, and we're excited about that. The 2020 Unified Theater program is starting, and Unified Theater dissolves typical barriers between youth through transformative school-based performing arts programs. In Unified Theater, young people with and without disabilities of all backgrounds come together as equals to put on a production. So we're looking forward to that. This Friday, we have a trivia night presented by Hall's Relay for Life team, and all proceeds will benefit the American Cancer Society. And many students involved in Pops and Jazz are kind of sad that we won't be going on our Euro tour in April because we worked so hard and we were looking forward to sharing our production with international audiences. However, we understand the decision was made with our best interests in mind. But the show must go on, so to speak, so we are continuing to work hard to prepare a truly spectacular show. And tickets are available in the box office or at hallhighjazz.com. Thank you.
Good evening. Juniors are in the midst of their preparation for SATs coming up on March 25th. Just as Isabella said, we have lots of sports ending, so congratulations to our players. National Academic Squad honorees for field hockey are seniors and juniors who have a minimum cumulative unweighted GPA of 3.5 out of 4.0, or the equivalent. Through the first quarter of the 2019-2020 school year, we had like 8 students around there receive that award. Congratulations to Kate Bell for being Connor's recipient of the Daughters of the American Revolution Good Citizen Award. She is pictured second from left with the other area school recipients on our Connor Twinner. Congratulations and thank you to the Black Student Alliance and Future Educators of Diversity on a highly successful and informative Black History Day last Friday. Students spent the day from periods 1 through 8 presentation representing like different countries from Africa, and then 8th period we had a panel of students from Future Educators of Diversity, and like students were able to ask questions to our students and just have great discussion. Congratulations to our cheerleaders as well as Halls. We won first place in New England, so that's NECA, which is a different competition. Connor's 4x8 relay team of Callum Sherry, Tyler Remigino, Reb Jordan Reed, and Gavin Sherry earned all New England honors today with the 5th place in an 8-minute at the New England Indoor Track and Field Championships in Boston. And congratulations to Nick Urso and Emma Alford, again, first ever Girls State Invitational for wrestling. For drama, we are presenting the Drowsy Chaperone opening this Friday night at 7 p.m. Please come see our administration team as well as our students make their debut. The senior citizen performance, however, is Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. And next Wednesday, we have parent-teacher conferences from 1:30 to 3:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to future business, the announcement of future meeting dates. So in addition to meeting to discuss the budget, we also have another just regular Board of Ed meeting this month. So we will get to see each other every week this month. So starting with next Wednesday, March 11th, for the first budget workshop at 7 p.m. Then we have a regular Board of Ed meeting on Tuesday, March 17th, also at 7. Then we have a public hearing on Wednesday, March 25th at 7, followed by our second budget workshop. And then finally on April 7th at 7 p.m., we have a regular Board of Ed meeting at which we will adopt a budget for the 2020-2021 school year. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Seeing none. Are there any additional comments from visitors? What's that?
So we've lost our tradition here, a longstanding tradition at the board, and today represents one of those. And I just want to, there's 2 times that the board gets together in a nonpartisan way to get together, and we always gathered as a group, and there's 2 times a year, once every 2 years on the day after election. After we get sworn in, we usually get together as a group, and that didn't happen this year. And then today, our shortest meeting of the year, we normally get together as a group, and we're missing that. And there's a long-standing tradition that's been going on for years and years, and I just sad to see it removed from this group.
As am I. So any of you who want to go out after this meeting, Happy to join. And thank you to our board historian for letting us know about those items. I personally forgot that this was one of the evenings that we could go out together, and the offer stands. We can head over to Rizzuto's or somewhere after this meeting. With no other comments from visitors, we don't need an executive session this evening. I will call for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.